So in our last class, we talked about what is cryptography and how cryptography plays an important role in our day-to-day life. So I have shown you a few of those examples where we have shown that many scam can be done using this internet, and today this cybersecurity plays an important role. So there are plenty of examples where this abstract algebra and number theory are very much useful. For example, this end-to-end encryption and all, where this a 904-digit long prime number, that bits are being, 900-digit long prime numbers are being used for secure communication. It's not only 904 digits, so it's basically some big prime numbers are required. So the question is, how did I get this kind of prime numbers? And while investigating this, you will be able to see that this abstract algebra and basic number theories are very much important in getting this kind of big numbers. So we have seen that there are lots of applications of the internet and all in our day-to-day life, and this is a kind of just 2019's glimpse shot of how much data that we consume every day or in a year. Okay, but we have at the same time seen a lot of disadvantages of using this internet, lots of hacking kind of thing like ATM skimming or fraud on using our credit card or debit card. Also hacking, so there are plenty of games which are available. There is a software called Pegasus, which are, if that is being installed at your mobile, then your camera as well as your location, all the text, everything could be controlled from outside. So that we have already seen. We have already talked about few of the softwares which are nowadays under scrutiny by Indian government. They just started to ban them. And also we heard about this darknet or dark web, where many illegal things could be done, because it's really impossible or sometimes very difficult to find who has sent you the message or to whom you are sending the message. So there are plenty of applications that can be done using this darknet or dark web. So mostly illegal things could be done there. We also heard about little bit of advanced technology where car hacking may be possible, or sometimes the pacemaker hacking may also be possible. So we also seen few smart houses, and we've seen that if that central system of that smart house is being captured or is being compromised, then the whole system could be collapsed. If we go a little beyond, then we have already heard about the cyber terrorism, and one of the examples could be WannaCry ransomware attack, and it was happened in 2017, just only for 4 days, May 12th to May 15th, and the whole world has seen that throughout the world. So this is the map for the red portion where this ransomware attack had happened, and you can see that throughout the world, thousands of dollars of money has been transferred to the hackers. So we were fortunate that it lasted only for 4 days, but we are expecting maybe even much bigger cyber attack throughout the world. So we have to be little careful. So the question is what to do. And here, one solution could be we can stop using internet. If we are going to stop using internet, then we are safe enough because we don't need to be connected and nobody can get into our machine. But if we look at it in a practical sense, and if I ask you this question, is it really possible to stop using internet? Then your answer will be certainly a big no. So we require really a secure digital world, and here the term cryptography comes into play. So as I mentioned in my last class, the cryptography means it's basically combination of two Greek words. One is cryptos, means hidden, and graphia means writing. So cryptography is nothing but the art of writing secret message. So the basic aim is, suppose one boy wants to send some message. For example, suppose one guy wants to send some message to some other guy, say, so this guy wants to send some message to, say, another guy, maybe like this, to this guy through using internet technology. The point is, up to this, there is no problem, but point is somebody is always there to listen what is being sent. So some bad guy. So he is always trying to listen what is being sent. So he might have some extra power that he may modify the message. Suppose this message is being sent, but he can modify this message. So he can modify M to M dash. For example, suppose he has transferred $100 to this guy, and suppose he has modified it to say $1,000, then that would be a problem for this boy. Or even suppose he can change this account to some other account, to his own account. So he has already specified some account number with this amount of money, but he has changed the account number to give his own account number and change the amount of money. So that would be a problem. So that may mislead a lot of things, and that may happen practically. So we require some security, and there cryptography comes into play. So the main aim of cryptography is that suppose this man wants to send something to this guy, then he should convert the original message M in such a way that even if he gets that converted message, it won't be not very easy for him to get information about the original message. So that's the basic idea for cryptography. So few technical terms are quite important. For example, suppose, so this guy is known as sender and this guy is known as recipient. So suppose sender wants to send some message. So the idea here is he sends this message through internet. So this is suppose this internet technology. Up to this there is no problem. But the point is this bad guy wants to listen it. And then suppose this is the original message that this boy wants to send to this girl. So if he sends this original message through this internet, then this bad guy will be able to listen what is being sent. That means the plain text will be known to this bad guy. So he will not certainly send the plain text, but what he will do, he will convert the plain text into ciphertext by using some lock and key. So we call this ciphertext as locked message. So locked plain text is known as ciphertext. So what he will do, he will send the ciphertext through this internet, and when this locked message will be reached by this girl, she will able to get some information about the message by doing some process. Now the process of converting plain text into ciphertext by using some mathematical tool using this lock and key system is known as encryption. And this locked message, when that will be received by this girl, she will convert this locked message to the plain text by using this key. That means she is going to unlock this text, this ciphertext, by using the key. And that key is very important. And the process through which the ciphertext could be converted into plain text is known as decryption. So these two processes, encryption and decryption, together is known as cryptography. While like this bad guy, there could be other bad guys who are always trying to find some loopholes of this system. So their aim is to get some information about the plain text, or there may be some information about the key. Okay, so getting some information about the key is quite important, because if they have the idea that for the next plain text also he is going to use the same key, then if they have the information about the key, then they will be able to unlock this ciphertext. So that's why sometimes the attackers are not only interested on a particular plain text, but they are mostly interested on getting some information about the key, and that is very important. Okay, so they are considered to be bad guys who are always trying to get some loopholes or weaknesses of the scheme, so that they will get some information about the key, or even sometimes some get some information about the plain text. So this process is known as cryptanalysis. That means analyzing the cryptographic tools or cryptographic process. So that is known as cryptanalysis. And these bad guys are known as adversary or attackers. So these bad guys are known as adversaries or attackers. Okay. And this whole process, that means the process of constructive part, that is the cryptographic part, as well as the destructive part, that is the cryptanalysis part, both together as a whole is known as cryptology. So cryptology is a bigger subject which has two branches. One is constructive one, which is known as cryptography. Another one is analyzing part or the destructive part, known as cryptanalysis. Okay. So we have two different kind of cryptographic scheme. One is symmetric key, another one is asymmetric key. Now, as I mentioned, these two keys are very important. If these two keys are happen to be the same, today I will give you some example where you will be able to understand what do we mean by having the same. Then we call it symmetric key or private key crypto system. If these two keys are happen to be same, we call it symmetric key or private key crypto system. Whereas if these two keys are different, then we call it asymmetric key or public key crypto system. So in our syllabus, we will have both symmetric key as well as asymmetric key. For mathematicians, this asymmetric key uh, is more suitable because it involves a lot of abstract algebra as well as linear algebra and all. Whereas for engineers, they prefer mostly the symmetric key part because it involves a lot of implementation issues and all. So if I consider few examples, then AES, RC4, they are few examples of the symmetric key crypto system. So we'll study both of them. Whereas for asymmetric key crypto system, the standard would be like RSA, Elgamal, or in our syllabus, we also do have Rabin public key crypto system. So we'll study three of them in our due course of time. Okay. So that's the basic idea of the whole course that we are going to have. And using this kind of public key crypto system and symmetric key crypto system, there could be a hybrid system which uses both of them as the primitive. And also we'll further have more primitives like hash functions or signature schemes, etc., that are also included in our syllabus. So in our due course of time, we will also look forward about all those topics. Okay. So let us try to have some examples. Okay. So if you think that cryptography is a quite current topic, then you are absolutely wrong because it has a long and fascinating history. So you can understand that I am going to give you a scheme which is a cryptographic scheme which usually it happened to be used around 5th century BC. So it's a before Christ. So you can understand that it's a 5th century BC. So that cipher is known as Catile cipher, and that was actually used by Spartans. So you all heard about the Spartans, who were all of them are basically fighters. So while they were in some fighting process, during that time when they want to communicate with each other using this kind of scheme. So let us try to explain what is that scheme. So it's very interesting and you will find it quite easy to see. So let us have, suppose I have a say like a strip of paper. Okay, it's just a white paper maybe. So it's a long paper. It's a small one, but suppose I have a long paper of this type, and suppose I have a pen. Okay, so it's just a white marker pen that are being used for whiteboards. What I'm going to do is this: I just roll this paper over this pen like this. Okay, just rolling out of this pen. So since this is a small paper, it may not cover all. If I could have a larger or longer paper strip, then it could cover all of the whole paper. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is that now it's all the paper is actually on that strip. Now I'll just write whatever I need to write. I'll just write one by one in one alphabet on each of these strips. Okay. Now if I just unroll them, then what will happen? It will look like a lot of alphabets written over it, but you cannot really read it properly because it's some gaps are there. Okay. So it was the ciphertext and the key was, this was the key. So when somebody wants to send some message, suppose this pen, a similar pen is also available to the other party to whom I want to send this message. So what I'm going to do is this, I'll just wrap it up over this, and then I will write whatever I need to write, and then I just unroll it, and I will send only this strip to the other end. When he or she will receive this one, she or he will able to know that I have sent this message. And before our communication, we have already decided that for future communication, we are going to use this kind of pen. So she will or he will also have this kind of pen. Then what she or he will do, he will just wrap it up over this, and when you are going to wrap it up, you will get the original message. You can read it very easily, very clearly, but when you just unwrap it, then it will be a long string of alphabets, which would be really difficult for anyone else who do not have any idea how I made this kind of scheme. So that was quite innovative, and it was like used long back. So you can understand that scatile means bamboo. So it's nothing but they are the bamboos, and you can understand that the strips are rolled on it. And after rolling this, if you unwrap this one, it will be a long strip of paper, and that paper could be sent to some other guy. Okay, so the sender will write something, and then it will be unwrapped, and then only that strip will be sent to the other guy. When he or she will receive this long strip of paper, what she will do, he or she will just wrap over a similar bamboo that was they have decided earlier. They will just roll it over it, wrap it over this, and they will get the message. So that was known as Catile cipher, and that was quite innovative, and that is quite important. So now, is it clear to all of you what is this definition, or how this Catile cipher was used? Any question? Okay, so if not, then suppose you are an attacker. Okay, so as I mentioned, suppose you are one of this attacker, and suppose this is the long strip of paper. Suppose this is a long strip of paper, something written over here, A, B, C, D, something. So something was there, and you get somehow you captured. So at that time, only messengers were there, no internet was there. So you captured the messenger who was carrying this strip. Okay. So the first thing suddenly you will do, you will just kill the messenger, and you received or retrieved this strip. Now my question is, your idea is to get some information about from here to this. So this is basically the ciphertext, and your idea is what was the plain text. Now suppose somehow you came to know that they are going to use the scatile cipher. That means you know that they are going to use some bamboo, but unfortunately the bamboo is not with you, it's only with him and him. So you have only this strip of paper. Now my question is, will you be able, how will you guess what was the original message? Any idea? Any idea that you can think of? Anybody?
Sir, I will try trial and error method.
Okay, so how will you try? Okay, just explain a bit.
I will take the first letter, and then after uh, omitting A and B, I will try C, and then D, and after that letter, I will use the third letter. In this way, next time I will try gap of 4 letters.
Okay, so
If
that's
there
very
is a
good.
meaningful word, then I will go for that.
Okay, that's a very good try. Yes. So basically, it depends on the radius of the bamboo strip, right? So bamboo. So the pen that I have used here is basically depends on the radius of the pen. So since I am wrapping it over up, so you can understand that there will be a same gap. So when I started with first I write something on a strip, and then I when wrap it up, then when after giving some gap, again it will come to the same place. Say I want to write Abhishek, A, then V. V will come after a certain gap. Again it will be wrapped, then I, my third alphabet will be I, that will come in the third. That means there will be a certain length of gap. So the point is you don't have any idea what could be that gap. So you know the process, but you exactly do not have this pen with you. So you may start with, okay, maybe it could be a 3 gap length, it could be a 4 gap length, it could be a 5 gap length, and so on. And try with this. After some time, when you will get some meaningful data on it, you will get the answer. So is it clear to all of you? So it was a good try. And in that way, one can do that, and one can surely make a program of that. So you can write a program. Those who are interested in writing programs, they can write a C program or Python program, whatever they like. What they will do, they will have some plain text. So the input would be plain text. Now you can understand that you can write the whole thing in terms of a matrix. Like you can have, a point is you can have like this kind of matrix you can think of. So it could be a matrix of this form, maybe say a matrix. Say say your radius is maybe 5 or something. Then what you can do, say you just consider it to be say 5 or 6, whatever may be. So the idea is like this. So this is your strip. So the strip is like this. It comes, sorry, maybe I can change. Yeah. So the strip starts from here, it goes here, and then it comes here. Okay. And then again comes here and so on. So after this one, after wrapping it up over the pen, so after say this is my first wrapping, say this is my A, so this is my V, okay, this is my ISHEK. So this is my Abhishek, but this A, if I unwrap it, then this will come here, okay, and then I will come here, S will come here. So that is a kind of gap. This gap length is fixed. Okay. Now, when you are going to wrap it up, this letter will come just after this letter, and this letter will come just after this letter, and so on. So now I think you can very easily implement it using C programming or Python programming, whatever program that you like. You can implement this and then make an attack. So first one is the constructive one. So construct the scheme. Construct the scheme. And the second part will be attack on the scheme. Attack on the scheme. So both of them are very important in cryptographic perspective, because unless you have some attack, you won't be able to construct, you won't be able to think of a more secure scheme. Okay. So the attack would be easy, you can understand, you can just think of the number of rows and columns and then try with many things. One thing you can do is that you can do it by all possible outcomes you can see, and let's check which one looks meaningful. Otherwise, for more professional writing of way of writing is that you can associate each of this word with the dictionary and check whether that's a dictionary word or not. If that's a dictionary word, then that might be a meaningful one. Okay, unless you get the words as dictionary words, you won't consider them to be a meaningful one. But for the time being, you can just see all the outputs that you could have after having radius 1, radius 2, radius 3, radius 4, etc., and check which one is your meaningful one, and that will give you the answer. So it's a good practice that you can start with. You can start writing the code and then you can show me. Okay. So I think, is there any question till now? Any question if you have? Okay. So let's come to another historical cipher that is known as Caesarian cipher. So it was also used long back. So it was 50th BC. Okay. So you can understand it, it would be around more than 2050 or 70 years old, more than. So it was done by Julius Caesar. So it was believed that it was this kind of scheme was used by Julius Caesar. So that's why it's known as Caesarian cipher. So let us try to have a look at what do you mean by this? What do you mean by this Caesarian cipher? Okay. Okay. So the idea is, suppose the Julius Caesar and so as you all understand that Julius Caesar used to fight a lot in his lifetime. So suppose during some point of time he is having some war at some war front, and some of his subordinate, say maybe his commander, he is also fighting at some other place. Okay. Suppose this distance is little far off. Suppose here Julius Caesar, suppose this is the war front for Julius Caesar, and suppose this is the war front for his subordinate, say commander. Okay, and suppose this is far apart, but they require, during that war, they require some information to communicate with each other. So the question is how they usually communicated during that time, and that is known as Caesarian cipher. So the idea is, before going to the war front, suppose before going to the war front, both of them they were in Rome. So in Rome, both of them, they decided that okay, next time we are going to use k equal to 11. Mind that before going to war front, both Julius Caesar and commander, they decided together, and that was a secret only known to them, that next time our k will be 11. So the question is what this k equal to 11 means. Okay. So after deciding k equal to 11, they now they may be far apart. It doesn't matter. But before going to the war front, they have decided that their future key will be k equal to 11. So what does it mean? It means that, so idea is Julius Caesar, suppose he wants to send some message. Suppose Julius Caesar wants to send the message is cryptography is fun. Okay. Suppose he wants to send the message to his subordinate, who is the commander, who was actually doing the war at some place which is apart from the place where Julius Caesar is currently in. Now the question is what message he is going to send. He is going to send this message through the this carrier. Okay. Now this carrier will carry this message, and he will reach to the place of that commander. Now the commander will receive this message. Now since both of them, they know that k equal to 11, he will get this message quite easily. Now the question is how Julius Caesar converted the original message cryptography is fun into this by using k equal to 11. So let us have a look at this. So here the plain text was cryptography is fun and k equal to 11. Now what Julius Caesar did, so at that time he usually did it in Roman. but for the time being, let us try to explain it in English alphabet, using English alphabet. So in English alphabet, we know that there are 26 alphabets, and consider these alphabets as 0, 1 to 25. That means A is assigned to 0, B is assigned to 1, C is assigned to 2. So there are 26 such many. Since we have started from 0, so Z will be 25. Okay. So basically, you can think of the roll number of A is 0, roll number of B is 2, and so on. So here the cryptography is fun, is the plain text. Now, K equal to 11. What does it mean? It means each of these alphabet will be shifted to the right cyclically 11 times. For example, so here C means the roll number of C is 2, and that will be shifted 11 times to the right. That means C plus 11, that becomes 13. So let us check what is the which character is for 13. It's nothing but N. So C will be replaced by N. Similarly, R. So R here is 17, and if I shift 11 times to the right, then it will come here. But what will happen then? So it should be cyclically shifted. That means after coming here, it should again go back cyclically. That means here R here is 17. So 17 plus 11, that becomes 28. That will come here. But what to do? It should come to here cyclically. That means if I divide 28 by 26 and consider the remainder. So the remainder will be 2, and that becomes 2 is C. So R becomes C, and so on. So all the things are shifted cyclically to the right. Now when the subordinate will get this value, this information, what he will do? He will just cyclically shift 11 times every alphabet cyclically to the left, and he will get back the original message. Is that clear to all of you? Any question? Any question still? Okay. So the scheme is quite simple. Now, if I ask you the question that any group or any mathematical things that you can associate with this scheme, anything, anything, any mathematical object like group, ring, field that you can associate with this scheme? Anybody?
Yes, sir. Z26.
Z26.
Yes, very good. So we can assume that, so all the alphabets were A, B to Z. So there were 26 alphabets. So we can think of this as Z26 with respect to action. Okay. So here A is 0 and Z is 25. Now, how the encryption was defined? So what is encryption? If you think of encryption is basically, so there are two things are important here. One is set of all plain text, set of all plain text, and set of all ciphertext. Okay. So we usually denote this is by P and this is by C. So in this case, our set of all plain text is nothing but Z26. So set of all plain text will be A, B, C up to Z, because we are actually encrypting character by character. And set of all ciphertext. So after doing our encryption on A, it will be again a character. So that will be again this character. So that means that will again be an element of Z26. So our script P, which is the set of all plain text, is same as the set of all ciphertext. Now, what is our key here? Here, key equal to how much? Q key equal to 11. Okay. So here we may consider that K is again a element of Z26. Okay. So there is another term known as key. So this is the set of all keys. So in this case, our set of all keys is also this K. So this is small k, this is script k. So here k belongs to script k, that is date 26. So now the question is, how do I define the encryption function? Okay, so encryption with respect to a key and decryption with respect to a key. Now tell me, what is my encryption function? How do I define? So encryption function is from where to where, and decryption function is from which set to which set. So encryption function from where to where, it should be from which place to which set to which set. Encryption function, tell me.
Z26 to Z26.
Very good, but in terms of P and C, tell me, in terms of P and C.
P to C.
P to C, very good. So plain text to ciphertext, whereas decryption function is from where to where? Decryption
C to
function
P.
is C to P, very good. Okay, so how this encryption function is defined here? Suppose this is my one message. How this encryption function is defined? This is defined as m plus k modulo 26. That means we can think of m class plus k class. Okay. Similarly, how the decryption function is defined? Decryption function is defined. So decryption function is on some ciphertext, say C. So C minus k modulo 26. That means C class minus k class. Okay. Now, if I consider it in a general way, then what is if I have some encryption of some message, and if I just decrypt it, what would be this function? What would be this value? So this is some plain text which I have encrypted using k, and then this encrypted message I then decrypt. What would be this value? What should I write here? What should I write here?
It will be M.
It should be m. For all m belongs to plain text, right? So that means dk composition ek is a mapping from where to where? Is a mapping from P to
Plain
P.
text to plain text.
Satisfying this property. dk composition ek equal to identity of plain text. Identity mapping. So it's a mapping. Identity mapping on plain text. That means dk composition ek of whatever be the value, that will also give me the same value. Okay, so that's the formal definition of a cryptographic scheme, or so what do you mean by a cryptographic scheme? So that means a cryptographic scheme, for a cryptographic scheme we should have these triplets, like set of all plain text, set of all ciphertext, set of all keys, and then set of all encryption functions, so usually E, and set of all decryption functions. Satisfying these properties, so for all EK from plain text to ciphertext, for all DK from ciphertext to plain text, so first you encrypt, then you decrypt, that should be equal to identity on plain text. Okay, so where ek and dk, sorry, where ek belongs to set of all encryption functions and dk belongs to set of all decryption functions. So that is the formal definition of a encryption or the cryptographic scheme. Okay, so here in case of Z26, now it's quite clear to you, and in the Julius Caesar time, usually this kind of instrument was used. Note that Julius Caesar did not have, of course, I mean, I'm not sure whether he has or not, but mathematically he did not have any idea about the definition of groups. not even cyclic groups, even not, I mean, he didn't have any idea about the axiometric definition that we have today. He did not have any such idea about group, but he made some kind of innovative scheme which is known as the SIP cipher or Caesarean cipher. So during that time, this kind of instrument were used. So you can understand that, suppose this is for plain text and this is for cipher text. So this is a concentric two kind of rings are there, and it can rotate about this center, both of them. Suppose it here a goes to n. So what does it mean? A goes to n means a goes to n means a goes to n. So that means your key is 13. If your key is 13, then what they are going to use it, basically they are going to just rotate, say this part is say remains fixed, and then they just rotate the inner circle, inner ring up to a goes to n, then a goes to n, b goes to o, c goes to p, and so on. So that way it would be very easy for them to understand what is basically the scheme or how to decrypt the things quite efficiently. Is it clear to all of you?
Yes,
Clear?
sir.
Okay, good. So suppose now if I go back to my this earlier question, suppose you are one of them. So you are an attacker, and suppose he is Julius Caesar and he is his subordinate. Somehow you come to know that Julius Caesar had sent some message, say ATS, suppose, and you receive this message. So this is the cipher text, and this has been retrieved by you, and somehow you know how this message was prepared. The only thing that you do not have is what information that you do not have? Tell me what
The key.
information? The key. So k equal to 11 was missing for you. Now tell me how. So this is not known to this boy, this bad guy. Now tell me how you are going to retrieve from here the original message. What would be your strategy?
In this case also I have to use the trial and error method.
Yes. So how to start with this trial and error method?
I will take the values of k from 0 to 25 and use the decryption scheme.
Yes. So you first start with k equal to say 1, then k equal to 2, and check the from here, say you do not even know whether it's a left shift or right shift. So suppose you know it's he Julius Caesar had made right shift, so you need to give left shift. So start with k equal to 1 and give every alphabet of it a left shift by 1. Okay, and check whether that's meaningful or not. If not meaningful, then try with k equal to 2, 3, 4 up to 25. And for mathematically speaking, you should also try with k equal to 0. That means it might happen that Julius Caesar had not used any key. That means original plain text has been sent. So that's why you also need to check whether this value k equal to 0 or not. So mathematically speaking, there will be altogether 26 options for an adversary to check, right? 0 to 25. All the keys you need to check. So that is nothing but the size of the key space. So if you remember, my key space was Z26. So he needs to check all possible keys. If he is lucky enough, then he may get this value k to be at 1 just after doing say 1 or 2 trials, or if he is little bit unlucky, then he may also have to go till k equal to 25. So it depends. Depending on his luck, he may get this information after at most 26 many trials, and that all trials, that means that is the size of the key. The size of the key space was 26, and he needs to check all possible such keys. Though there are only 26 many options, but still he has to explore all possible keys. That's why this is known as exhaustive search. So he needs to exhaust all possible searches. That means he needs to exhaust all possible search. How many times? The size of the key space. That's why this is known as exhaustive search. And this is also known as brute force search. Brute force search. That means you are looking into all possible ways how this can be attacked and all. Okay, so this part is done. So you need to basically attack with 26 many options. So now I'll go to little beyond. So one thing it's quite clear that since the key space size was 26, so the key space size was only 26, you need to do only 26 many options to break the scheme. That means the size of the key space was only 26. So one of the question could be, if I increase by some means the size of the key space, then will that give me more security? Of course, it will give you more security than this. Suppose my key space size is 26 and you developed a scheme where the key space size is 40. Then of course, with respect to the key space size, your scheme is better than me, because for exhaustive search, your scheme requires 40 searches, whereas my scheme requires 26 searches. In that respect, your scheme is better. So let us try to see few better schemes. Okay. So let us do with, I am sure that you have already done those things. Those who have not, I mean, those you, if you forget about few things like group of units and all, GCD, group of units, modular operations, for them, I request them all to just have a look at the video. Just now, I have taken a course in my last semester course. I had taken for undergraduate student a number theory course, where I have given all the details regarding this prerequisites. So I will give a link to this video about this prerequisite that will be required from my earlier videos. So you might have seen those things or you already know those things. So what are the things? Let us check. So we know that Zn plus is a cyclic group. But the problem is, if I consider Zn with respect to dot, and if I ask you the question, is Zn dot a group? What will be your answer? True or false? What will be your answer? True or false? Zn with respect to dot, usual multiplication, will that be a group? True or false?
False.
False. Why?
Zero element has not any inverse.
Okay, so here you have zero element belongs to Zn, but with respect to multiplication, you can never have an inverse of 0. So you will not be able to find the inverse of 0. So it cannot be a group. Okay, so let us consider with this particular example. Say Z12 minus 0. So I know that Z12 with respect to dot can never be a group. Now let's try with, I just remove the class 0 from here, and I again considered Z12 minus 0 and with respect to dot. Now if I ask you the same question, is it a group? Is it a group? What will be your answer? True or false?
False.
False. Why?
It contains zero division. 3 and 4 are zero.
So since we are considering with respect to group, zero divisor will not be a good answer. Yes, you are certainly correct, but if I want to attack this problem with respect to only group, then zero divisor will not be a sufficient answer, because zero divisor concept comes only in ring, not in group. So you are considering Z12 plus and then dot, then it's fine. I understand your intention, but that will not be a good answer here. So now tell me, restate your statement, why this is not a group.
3 and 4 will not have inverse.
Very good. So if I consider class 3 or class 2 or class 4 or class 6, none of them has inverse. Okay. So
It
no
is not even
inverse.
closed.
It is not even
Closed.
close, because if you have class 6
3
into
and 4.
class 2, yes, or even class 2 into sorry, class 3 into class 4, then you will get zero element, but zero element I have already discarded. So this group is, if I consider this, then this is not even a closed with respect to this dot. Okay, so anyway, so this is not a group because I can find few of the elements whose inverse are not there. So let us just discard them and consider only those elements. Like I have 0, I don't have the inverse. For 2, I don't have the inverse. For 3, I don't have the inverse. For 4, I don't have the inverse. For 6, I don't have. For 7, 8, I don't have. For 9, I don't have. For 10, I don't have, and so on. So I discarded all the elements whose inverse has some problem. So I cannot find the inverse, and I considered this. I removed all those elements and I consider this as 12 star, or sometimes somebody like is group of units with 12 elements. Okay, it doesn't mean the group of unit contains 12 elements, but the group of units on 12 elements, that means Z12 minus all those things. So how many elements it will have? So this is basically what are the things. Class 1 should be there, 2, 3, 4, class 5 will be there, class 7 will be there, and class 11 will be there. So there are only such 4 elements which I call 11 U12 or Z12 star. Now you can understand that this U12 with respect to dot, this is a group of order 4. Okay, so this is a group with respect to this because inverse of every element exists. Now quickly, can you tell me what are the inverse of say 1? The inverse of 1 is 1. What is the inverse of 5 in Z12? Quickly.
5
Yes, it's 5. Very good. For 7,
is 7.
7 is 7. For 11,
It is 7.
11.
Yes.
Okay. So okay, so it was, I shouldn't write it in class 1. So I think I should write it just a number, not as a class. So the order here is 1. The order here is class 5. What was his order?
Ordered is 2, but inverse
Okay,
is
no,
5.
okay. I was finding inverse. So inverse was okay. That way it was correct. So it was class 5. The inverse of it's 7, and its inverse was 11. Right. So they are the inverses of these elements. So now you can see that all the elements, they do have multiplicative inverse. So they form a group, and this group is known as group of units. Okay. Sometimes you can see that this group of units might be a cyclic group and not. So that portion is very important, and in many competitive exams you will find this question in different terms or different ways. The question is, for which values of n, values of n, Zn star or Un is a cyclic group. Can anybody tell me quickly
2,
how the
4,
so if it is 2 or 4 or
or p to the power n, where p is prime,
p to the power n,
and 2p to the power n.
2 to the where p is
P is prime
P
odd
is prime.
odd prime, where
or
p
prime.
is an odd prime. So that is very important. So now if I very quickly ask you this question, is Z100 star cyclic? Z100 star, is it cyclic?
No.
So this is not cyclic. Z50 star cyclic?
Yes.
Yes.
So this is yes, because 50 is of this form 2 into 5 square. So this is odd prime and this is 2 into odd prime to the power n form. So this is a cyclic group. So this kind of questions are very frequently asked in different forms. Not exactly this question, but if you know this result, then you will able to give uh, uh, lots of answers to many questions. Okay. Now I am going to have a scheme. How the scheme looks like. Okay. So this is known as affine cipher. So here my plain text set, ciphertext set is Z26. Now my key space is every element of a key is an ordered pair. AB belongs to Z26 cross Z26 such that GCD of A26 equal to 1. So note that only the first coordinate, that A, should be relatively prime with 26. Okay. So one key should look like ordered pair AB belongs to Z26 cross Z26 such that GCD of A and 26 equal to 1. Now in just now we had already seen that whose inverse exists the in Zn star if A belongs to Zn star, then or if I consider to only to Zn, A belongs to Zn has multiplicative inverse in Zn star. If so, they are all from Zn. If GCD of A and N equal to 1. So this is if and only if as well. So if GCD of N equal to 1, then also Zn star. So then A belongs to Zn star. Is it clear? Okay. So here my K is an ordered pair. Now how do I define my encryption? So encryption of this K means A comma B of some message M. How do I define this? I defined it like AM plus B modulo 26. Okay. So this is my plain text. Now how do I get my ciphertext? So what would be the decryption of AK, AB of this ciphertext C? So I call it C. What should be this value? So C equal to AM plus B. What I need from here? I need to find this M. That is my decryption of C. So what is this M? M is
A inverse C minus B.
yes. So if I just make a side change of this, so C minus B. Okay. Now if I make an inverse of this, then if I make an inverse of A inverse, then I will get the value of M. Okay, clear? So this value could be extracted by using this formula. This formula. So here my A x plus b, and this is my ciphertext, that is A inverse y minus b modulo 26. Okay. So for example, if I consider k to be 7 and 3, then what is k inverse in 26? What is, tell me, what is k inverse? So if I consider my k to be, how much it was? K was my 7. K was my 7 and 3. Okay. So encryption of this k with m, it was 7m plus 3 modulo 26. Now if I have this 7 inverse, then we are basically done. So what is the 7 inverse in Z26? Somebody tell me. What is 7 inverse in Z26 star maybe? What is this value? What is the value of 7 inverse? Okay. So to find this value, we are going to use an innovative technique known as extended Euclid algorithm. Okay. What it says, that if D is the GCD of two elements, say AB, then, so if, then there exists C and D belongs to Z such that the GCD D can be expressed as AC plus BD. Okay. That means since we are finding 7 inverse in Z26 star, that means GCD of 7 and 26 must be 1. Unless their GCD is 1, you cannot find the inverse in Z26. Okay. So their GCD is 1. So according to this rule, it says that 1 should be represented as 7C plus 26D. So we need to find these values of C and D. That's all. So how do I find this? The simple way is basically, so here we are basically going to find GCD of 7 and 26. So what you will do, start with the bigger number 26 and try to represent as follows. So it's 3 into 7, that means 21 plus 5. Okay. Now you consider this is here and 5 as a quotient. So 1 into 5 plus 2. In the second step, this is my bigger number and this is my smaller number. So write 5 equal to 2 into 2 plus 1. Okay. Now you can understand that if you come to this 1 portion, 1 or the GCD, then you have to stop here and try to rewrite it. So 1 is nothing but 5 minus 2 into 2. Then replace this 2 here in this equation. 5 minus 2 into 7 minus 1 into 5. Just multiply them. You will get 2 into 14 minus 5 into, so how much is this?
Sir, 3 into 5 minus 2 into 7.
Yes. So it's basically already 5 was there. So 5 minus. So it should be, sorry, I should write it like a better way. So it should be 5 minus 2 into 7 plus 2 into 5. So minus minus plus, that means 3 into 5 minus 2 into 7. You can check, this value is 15, this value is 14, and the value is 1 here. Now it's not yet complete. So you have to put this value of 5 from here. So 3 into 5 means 26 minus 3 into 7 minus 2 into 7. So equal to 3 into 26 minus, so this is 9 into 7, and here minus 2, that means 11 into 7. So please check what is this value, whether this value is 1 or not. So it's 18, 1, 6, 7, and this value is 77. So 1. So you can write 1 in terms of this. Now if I take mod from both sides, then what I'll get? I'll get 1 mod 26 is congruent to 3 into 26 minus 11 into 7 mod 26, or 1 mod 26 equal congruent to, so this part will get vanished, only this part, minus 11 into 7 mod 26. So what is this 11 minus 11? What is minus 11 in Z26? Can somebody tell me what is minus 11? So that is 15 into 7 mod 26. Okay. So what is this value? That means the inverse of 7 is 15. What is 7 into 15? How much? Can anybody tell me quickly what is the value of 7
105.
into
105.
105? And then if I divide it by 26, what should I get? So 4, 4, 0 means 1. So we are getting 1 here. That means the inverse of 7 in Z26 is 15. Is the algorithm clear to all of you? Is the algorithm clear to all of you? Okay, then quickly, how quickly? Just quickly give me the answer of, say, 15 inverse in Z26. Quickly, last dot in the ring. Who should give me
7.
the answer first? Everybody get 7? Because I have already done it. So 15 inverse is 7 and 7 inverse should be 15. So without doing this. So that's a very good observation. Now, little bit more. Say what would be the inverse of 13 you can get. What would be the inverse of maybe 19 in Z26? Quickly. In the ring Z26. Quickly. 19 inverse. We're taking much time. How much is 19 inverse? Anybody get it? So you are taking so much of time.
Is it 11?
Let's see, man. I don't know. So you have to write it like this: 1 into 19 plus 7, right? Then again, 19 equal to 2 into 7 plus 5. Then 7 equal to 1 into 5 plus 2. Then 5 equal to 2 into 2 plus 1. So once you know this GCD is 1, so you need to retrieve this back. So 1 should be written something as an element of 26 plus something as an element of 19. Now tell me this equation, those who have completed it. What should be the coefficient of 26 and what should be the coefficient of 19?
Coefficient of 26 is -8.
Okay, and 19 is?
11.
You can check it. If so, then 11 would be the inverse of 19. Okay, so is it clear to all of you? So this question sometimes is being asked in different forms. So you need to, especially in NVHM exam, sometimes they ask you this question to find some inverse. For example, sometimes you might know that Wilson's theorem. You know Wilson's theorem. So suppose they have given what is the value of when say 98 factorial is divided by 101. What is the value of like this? 98 factorial is how much if I divide it by 101? Okay. So this question is, so by Wilson's theorem, you know that if P is a prime, then P minus 1 factorial is congruent to minus 1 modulo 101. Sorry, P. So if I put P to be 101, then what I'll get? 100 factorial is congruent to minus 1 modulo 101, right? Now here it has been given 98. So that means 99 into 98. Sorry, 99 into 100. So here 100, 99 into 98 factorial should also be equal to minus 1 mod 11, 101. So you need to find basically the inverse of this. If I multiply both sides by inverse of this, then we are done basically. So now what you need to find is basically the inverse of this. So while finding this inverse, you need to use this extended Euclid algorithm to get the answer quickly. So this kind of questions are quite common in many of the competitive exams. So you need to find, or you need to increase your speed. I can check, I can see that your speed is not that good. So you need to work on upon it by solving few of the problems. So maybe I will share the number theoretic problem that I have already given to the undergraduate student that you can start with, so that your speed can be increased, and they are very frequently asked in many of these exams. Okay, so up to this it's clear to all of you. So it's your kind of homework to find what would be the remainder when 98 factorial is divided by 101. Okay, so I need this answer maybe in the next class or somewhere. So this is your homework. Okay, so let's again come to this cipher, and that is known as Caesarean cipher. So what does it mean? So here my plain text is, again the plain text and ciphertext is Z26, and here the keys are ordered pair such that GCD of A26 equal to 1. So first component is relatively prime with 26. Now my encryption function is just AX plus B. AX plus B. And my decryption function is A inverse Y minus B modulo 26. That's all. Now if I ask you this question, so here my key space was A comma B belongs to Z26 cross Z26, such that GCD of A26 equal to 1. So this is my key space. Now, what is the size of this key space? Can anybody tell me quickly? What is the size of key space?
Twelve into 26.
Okay, so first component is relatively prime to 26. That means the number of such elements is pi 26, and the second component belongs to this. That means it's 26. That means pi of 26 is, so phi 2 into phi 13 into 26, and that is equal to phi 2 is 1, phi 13 is 12 into 26. So it's a 12 into 26, whatever could be this value. So you can understand that in my previous example,
312.
how much?
312.
12. Okay. So 312. So you can understand that this is a special or a generalization of Caesarean cipher. Can anybody tell me why this scheme can be considered as a generalization of Caesarean cipher? How this affine cipher can be considered as a a generalization of Caesarean cipher, or the Caesarean cipher can be considered as a
In
particular
Caesarean,
case of. Yes,
in
please tell me.
Caesarean cipher, we are taking a equals to 1 in particular.
Okay, so if you put a equal to 1 in this affine cipher, then that becomes Caesarean cipher. Okay, and in case of Caesarean cipher, the size of the key space was only 26. But now you can understand that you are able to increase the size from 26 to, I guess, 312 or something. Yes, 312. That means in that respect, this scheme, affine cipher, could be considered as a better scheme than Caesarean cipher. Is it clear? So up to what we have studied, one impression that you may have, that if you increase the size of the key space to a very large extent, then your scheme is very safe. So let us try to increase further by increasing the size of the key space. Okay, let us come to another example. So I am sure that many of you are very fond of playing with Rubik's Cube, I'm sure. And there is a very good connection with permutation group and Rubik cube. So each of the moves that you do is basically an element of some permutation group. That means you will have some finite number of different possibilities, and the theories are developed, rich theories are there with respect to mathematics. Then you can see that there are some golden moves are there, so that you will suddenly theoretically that could be proof that I think that could be maybe 21 or 23 moves. You can always come to the identity element. That means where the colors are matched. That actually what we need. Okay. So by using lots of theories of permutation groups, many good things are found theoretically. Okay. So now we are going to use another use of symmetric groups. Okay, so this is an example of a substitution cipher. So idea is again almost similar. The idea is, say my plain text could be in capitals, say A to Z, and suppose I have defined that wherever I will get A in my plain text, I will replace it by D. Wherever I will get B, I will replace it by F. Wherever I will get C, I will replace it by H, and so on. Now, one thing you must see, that suppose here A goes to D, is it possible like D can also go to D, or maybe E can also go to D? Like here, my A goes to D. Is it really possible any other alphabet, say E will also go to D? If that will happen, then in the ciphertext, if you get D, then you will have a confusion where to go back. Whether shall we go to A or shall we go back to E? So I should have a kind of encoding in which no alphabet will go to the previously used alphabet. Okay, that means if I have already A goes to D, I can never have any other alphabet from B to Z will also go to D. What does it mean actually? That actually induces to the concept of a permutation. So if I write this A to Z as 1 to 26, I'm sure that you are unable to see the alphabets, but if you zoom it, you will see that it is like 1, 2, 3 up to 26. And what does it this means? So A goes to D, that means 1 goes to 4. So here it's written 1 goes to 4. So here B goes to F and F is 6. That means 2 goes to 6. C 3 goes to H and here H is your 8. So 3 goes to 8 and so on. Okay. So this is nothing but a permutation pi. So this is my key. Okay. So this is my key. So suppose this is sender, this is receiver. Both of them, they use the same key, the same permutation, pi. Both of them has the knowledge of pi. Like in Julius Caesar case. In Julius Caesar case, both of them, they know the value k equal to 11. Or in affine cipher case, both of them know the value of AB. So here also, both of them, they know the value of pi, the permutation. That has been prefixed. Okay. Now, if I want to replace like cryptography is fun, it becomes C. C means H. So C becomes H. R. What is R? R becomes Y. Y. Y becomes V and so on. So cryptography is fun becomes this. Okay. So that's the idea. And suppose you are the receiver, you receive this one and you know this permutation, you just make an inverse of it. That's all. Wherever you get H, whatever you get H, where is H, you replace it by C and so on. So you will get the original message back. Now suppose again we come to the same story. Suppose you are one of the attackers and you get some message and you somehow come to know that this is obtained by permutation cipher. So everything that you have the knowledge of everything except pi. Okay. Now if I ask you the question, how will you attack the scheme? What would be your answer? How will you attack the scheme? What will be your answer?
Frequency analysis.
Okay, frequency analysis, I will come to it later on. But at the very beginning, you may think of, I will exhaust all the permutations, right? So if you do it by hand, you will be surprised to know that there will be only 26 many options, 26 factorials many options. There is one exclamatory sign here, 26 factorial, because that pi is nothing but a permutation from 1 to 26 to 1 to 26 set. So there will be all possible 26 factorial many such options. And you'll be surprised to know that 26 factorial is nothing but this number. So it's quite a huge number. And sometimes it's also very important. Sometimes in many of the competitive exam, you are being asked to find the number of zeros at the end of this given number. So here you can check that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 6 zeros are there at the end of 26 factorials. But if I ask you the same question, how many zeros are there at the end of 100 factorials? How to calculate? So that kind of questions are very frequently asked in many of the exams. So you will also have to know the idea how to find the number of such zeros at the end. So this idea is very simple. Just you try to understand how the zero comes here. So in case of say 26 factorial, how the zero they come into picture? Zero comes due to the product of few things, like 0 comes due to the product of 2
5
and
times
5. So basically 0 comes due to the product of even number and 5, or anything multiple of 5, right? So if I have 5 factorial, then how many zeros that you could have? So it's 1 into 2 into 3 into 4 into 5. That means this pair will give me 1 0. So at the end of 5 factorial, how much is 5 factorial? 5 factorial value is how much? Quickly,
120.
120. So you can check that there is only 1 0. If I consider 6 factorial, then you can check that it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And that is 720. Again, it's 1. Why 1? Because here only one such pair is present. That means here many even numbers are there. But unfortunately, due to the shortage of 5, you cannot have 0 at the end. So you can understand that till 9 factorial, you can never be having more than 1 0 at the end. You can check it. But as long as, or as soon as you get 10 factorial, if you see that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So you can understand that these two will make some 0, and any even number. So 2 I have already used. So this will make another 0, or already in 10 I have 1 0. Or multiplication with any even number other than 2, it will give you another 0. So you can understand that it will basically is a product of 2 into 5. This 5 is important. Similarly, you can understand that till 10 to 14 factorial, you will have the similar kind of zeros, like 2 zeros. But as long as you will have 15 factorial, you can understand that that will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. So here, this will give you 1 0, maybe this will give you 2 0, and any even number with this 5 will give you another 0. So you can understand that from 15 to 19 you will have similar. Similarly, you can carry on. So what is actually giving you? It's giving you basically the count of number of 5s, or some power of 5s are present, or some multiplications with respect to 5. That is actually giving you the actual number. So that is basically, you will have plenty of even numbers, but the shortage is basically the 5, or the multiple of 5, or some power of 5. Okay. So to calculate exactly now, can anybody tell me very quickly how to check how many factorials, how many zeros? We have already seen. Now we are going to see it mathematically, how many zeros will be there at the end of 26 factorial. Quickly, can anybody tell me how to check?
6 0.
Okay, how?
With 26 division with 5 plus
Yes,
26 division with 5 square, and take the greatest integer part of those terms.
very good. So if I consider 26, so I need to basically find how many 5s or 5 powers are there inside. Okay. So in 26 factorial, I can do, if I consider, if I 26 divided by 5, and if I consider the integers here, greatest integer, then what you will see? You will see that 5 are there. 5 5s are there. Who are they? This is 1. Then with 10 you have. Then with 15 you have. Then with 20 you have. Then with 25 you have. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this 5 value actually is coming from these 5 numbers. But you can understand that if you have, if you already taken this 5 from here, then it will be 1 remaining. If I take 5 from here, then I have 2 remaining. If I take 5 from here, I will have 3 remaining. If I take 5 from here, it will be 4 remaining. If I take 5 out of here, I will again have 5. Okay. And this 5 is capable of making 0 with any remaining even integers. So if I consider only 5 here, then you will not be able to count this 5 squared 5. Okay, that's why again you need to check how many of them are basically divisible by 5 square. Okay, and this is 1. As a result, you have initially 5. So that means the formula will be the number of zeros. Formula will be take 26 divided by 5 plus 26 divided by 5 square plus 26 divided by 5 cube and so on. It will be endless. But you can understand that soon this number will be more than the numerator. If this number is more than the numerator, these values become 0 like this. 26 divided by 125 is more than, 26 is quite less than 125. So this value will become 0 soon. As a result, from here I will get 5 plus 1. The result 6. And you can cross check it. The value last at the end I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's mathematics, and this kind of questions are quite common in many of the competitive exam. Now I am sure that you will able to do those problems. Okay. So let's come to again our idea. So now you can understand that you cannot do by hand this all possible exhaustive search, right? So it will certainly take plenty of time. So you must think of, okay, why not writing a program, and that program will give me the exhaustive search. Let's try with that. Okay. So if I consider a computer, and if I consider a decent computer of modern configuration, then suppose my computer is capable of doing 1 million, means 10 lakh cipher alphabet per second. In 1 second, you can process 10 lakhs of such alphabets. Then with that high speed computer, to exhaust all this, it will require 10 to the power 13 years. 10 to the power 13 years, which is more than the age of the universe. Now you can understand that how much time it will take to do the exhaustive search if you do with this high speed computer. It's more than the time that uh, it requires, is more than the age of the universe. So you may think that, okay, the key space size is so big that the computer even won't be able to break this. But cryptography is very interesting. Here, not everything goes into a straight line. So you may think that, okay, here the key space size. So I started with a key space size of 26. Then I increased it by means of affine cipher having the key space size 312 or something like that. But now I have extended it quite long, like 26 factorial, and it's really impossible for a machine to do all the exhaustive search, because it takes the age, which is time which is equivalent to the age of maybe the universe or even more. So what to do then? When this substitution cipher actually invented, people thought that it's now very safe to use this kind of scheme, because now it's not possible to break, because you cannot do exhaustive search. But as I mentioned, cryptography doesn't always work in a straight line. There could be a problem. Okay, but before going to that, let us try to solve this problem. So please take a screenshot of this problem and try to answer my question. Please take a screenshot of this and give me the answer.
So the substitution cipher uses the permutation group, that is with the same letters one same letter can't be sent to two different letters.
Yes. So yeah, you are right. That means so you are right. So can you please explain once more?
The substitution cipher uses the uh, permutation on the set. As a result, every element is sent to a particular element or
Yes.
is in the set. So, in the name of Peter, there are two repetitions of a letter. That is,
Yes.
E is twice. So, if it was Peter, then the clue must have some repetition.
Yes.
of
Very good.
letter.
So it was just simple observation that Sherlock Holmes and Dr. John Watson found a piece of paper containing a clue about a serial killer who is either Olive or Peter. The clue read as Nigel. So it's just a conversation, my dear Watson. I believe you have a guess about the cipher used here, and then I mean, his one of the assistant, John Watson, one of his friends, he says that my money is on substitution cipher. So they are trying to guess which cipher is being used. So they concluded that okay, substitution cipher might have been used. Then Sherlock Holmes says that so is mine. Now tell me, dear, who do you think is the killer? Then Johnson, it could be either of them. How on the earth we say anything? Do we say anything? Then Sherlock Holmes says that I have significant reason to believe that Peter is innocent. Okay, so they had actually two clues. I mean, one clue, Nigel, and they have at the end sorted out two of the suspects. So Oliver or Peter, one of them could be a suspect, but they had a clue, like two clues they had, like the scheme that they have found might be used by using the substitution cipher, as well as Nigel was somewhere written by using this substitution cipher. So as one of you had already mentioned that it must be uh, Olive, because in Peter we had E used twice, Peter. So here we had two E's. That means if I use substitution cipher, so this E will go to the same place. So in the clue, there must be some of the letters which will repeat. But here, as you see that no of the alphabets are repeating here, so it must be Olive. So that's the basic idea. Is it clear to all of you? Okay, good. So people thought when it came the substitution cipher that it could be an unbreakable cipher. Nobody, even the computers, even the supercomputers, don't be able to break this. But unfortunately, as I mentioned, cryptography doesn't work in a straight line. There could be other ways to break the scheme. Okay, so it's a very innovative idea of breaking the scheme. This is known as frequency analysis. So it depends on a particular language. So suppose if I consider English alphabet, then you can see that in English alphabet, not all the alphabets they are frequently used. Like for example, E is the most used alphabet in English alphabet. Okay, for example, if I just go for a simple simple experiment, then if I ask you this question, among all of us, how many of your names start with S, uh, E and A? Especially in Bengali, there are many whose name starts with A and S. So if I ask you this question, from here it's quite clear that my name, then Obhijit name, it starts with A, and if I go to S, then you will find that many of their names. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Seven names are out of this our maybe 20 participants, out of which 7 names starts with the alphabet S. Okay, so that's quite crazy. I mean, it's quite interesting observation. So that means not every alphabet in some language occurs in a similar fashion. Like if it should be like we were 20 participants and there are 26 alphabets. So if it would be equally likely, then you can understand that the 7 students' name cannot start with the letter alphabet S, right? So in English alphabet, it has been found that E is the mostly used letters for a one single alphabet. Then T is very used the alphabet. Then A is another. So each of the alphabets they do have some of the frequencies. Okay. Not only that, if you consider two alphabets side by side, then TH, HE, IN, ER, etc. in a decreasing order. So their frequencies are in decreasing order. Most used one is TH, then HE, then IN, and so on. In a similar fashion, if I consider three alphabets altogether, then THE is the most frequently used three alphabets together, then ING, AND, and so on. So that's a very important observation. Now suppose I am one of the attackers and I receive say one page of ciphertext. Say this is one page of ciphertext where I have many alphabets. Okay, so it's a full of one page. So I have many alphabets in that plain text. So I will just make a count of each of these alphabets. Like suppose everything is written in English. So I get all the alphabets that I received here is in English, and I know that this scheme is basically obtained by using substitution cipher. Okay. So what I found in my thing, so I started with how many A's are there, how many B's are there, how many C's are there, how many Z's are there. I counted all of them. I found that suppose C is the most occurred alphabets here in my ciphertext. So with high probability that in the plain text C was actually E. So wherever I will get C, I will try to replace it by E to get my plain text. And suppose I get few of the alphabets together, and suppose TH is the most occurred alphabet, and suppose I have seen that something like KT I obtained in my ciphertext, which are mostly occurred two alphabet together, and maybe say PQT as my mostly occurred three alphabets together. By using few trial and error with these observations, you will certainly get few part of the writings or the ciphertext from where suppose few of the words or few of the letters that you can able to retrieve by using this kind of trial and error of the whole ciphertext. Now our human visual system is very strong that they can even read even if you have something missing. For example, if I write a uh, whole English text with say just last two letters, if I swap them on every last two letters of every word, if I swap them, then also we'll able to read it because our human visual system is very strong. They can recognize the pattern. So after getting few of the hints, you will able to understand what would be the other alphabets, and then you will get back the things very easily. And my many of the engineering students who do with me the summer training, usually I tell them to implement this kind of scheme, and very efficiently, maybe within half an hour, they come up with a plain text which may not be a complete plain text, but you can even read. what was the original plain text. So if that's the idea, that how cryptanalysis could be done on substitution cipher. And with that, maybe I will stop here. I will work again on other cipher like Vigenère cipher and all with some extra examples. So till now, any questions? So those who are reading it, I will also give the link of the book which I am currently following. I am following my own book. It's from chapter 12. So please read this chapter 12. I will also give a link of that book so that you can get it. And then up to chapter 12, we will find the historical backgrounds of the ciphers. Then I will come to the modern ciphers, maybe within 2 or 3 days. But before that, we'll first do a basic things that are required for this cryptanalysis and cryptography. So any questions, if you have, you are free to ask me.